It's an MCU fan. How are you doing, random MCU fan? Thanks for this phone call. You want to ask me what's so wrong with a superhero attacking a man for asking her to smile? Everything. He asked her to damn smile. Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth, and fancy seeing you here, and you are very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. And welcome to Wednesday's edition of the dceu Daily. It's time for some examples. So, where are we? So, this really is how this madness all started. Avengers, Assemble. This is how and why the MCU became so dominant. So, this was a result of this. Justice League. Now, obviously, there's a lot we can say about Justice League. But in fact, you're probably better off comparing this with Man of Steel, because they're two different films. But do you remember the gifs? Do you remember how, the Avengers didn't kill any characters, but Man of Steel did, and all that crap? So the rivalry started really early. So anyway, as I say, can we compare Justice League with Avengers Assemble? I think we can. Avengers Assemble is a carefully thought out film, and Justice League is a Frankenstein's monster, unfortunately, that was rushed and was basically a conglomeration, a mixture of two people's work. Basically, Zack Snyder's film cut to pieces and made into something else. Basically, they took what Zack did, the beautiful film that Zack did, and tried to make it into this. That's the simple truth. And apart from some weird smiling from Batman and that terrible upper lip CGI, in a way, Joss Whedon succeeded. He did. He didn't succeed in having a very successful box office movie, but he succeeded in doing what they wanted him to do. Now, so obviously you can't turn a film that's one kind of film into another kind of film. It's absolutely ridiculous. But it's just interesting because we just had Wonder Woman. We were getting to a better place. Not saying the other films weren't good. I'm just saying the reaction to Wonder Woman was so good. At least there was more positivity about the DCEU. And then we go and do this. Now, I said before Justice League even was released, I said that Justice League is going to be the last problem. I just had a feeling where we were going. And it is funny in a way because obviously I'm desperate to see the Snyder Cut. But despite how crazy this was and how they took Zack's beautiful 3-hour movie, cut it to pieces and gave us just under 2 hours of this, there are elements of Justice League that still work better than Avengers Assemble. Basically, Avengers Assemble isn't a deep cinema piece. We know that. We know we've seen all these kind of origin films already. They've put them together. It's interesting. It's done in a clever way. But ultimately, there's not really a thread there. There's not. It's kind of interesting in the sense that you've got Loki, who is Thor's brother, kind of, being the enemy of the film. Obviously, with Justice League, you've got this Steppenwolf thing that just doesn't work. I never liked Steppenwolf being the enemy from the first moment I heard it. I didn't. I thought, who is he? I've never heard of him. Most of us random people had never heard of him. What are you doing here? And I think if it was done the way Zack wanted to do it, we would have known who Steppenwolf was and his whole history and power struggle with Darkseid. It would have been beautiful. But alas, it wasn't to be. So the MCU and the mouse won again because of Warner Brothers' idiocy. But also understandable nerves because they launched the DCEU to compete with the MCU. That's why it was launched. So when people say, oh, yeah, well, we're not in competition, we're all friends. Bullshit. Of course we're in competition. Feige Right, Feig, right, let's talk about Feig. Nice Mr. Feig, who loves both the DCEU and the MCU and he wants both of them to be successful. When you do this, you are an enemy. You are an enemy. This is Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, and this is Captain America Civil War. Now, of course, when you can compare these two movies, I feel a lot confident about saying Batman v Superman is the superior movie. So Feig has already told us so many times that, that he felt a bit threatened by Batman v Superman and he wanted to kind of, let's be honest, make a similar film. And he did. But actually, Captain America Civil War is actually a shit film. It is. Think about this film. It has the most pointless villain of all time. But it is a villain who's behind the scenes, stirring things up and manipulating things. So let's go to Lex Luthor in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. A villain, a more iconic villain, of course, behind the scenes, pulling the strings, making sure Batman and Superman fight. But the difference is Lex Luthor actually works in this. He's not the Lex Luthor from Superman the movie. He's not the Lex Luthor from Smallville. He's not. But he's still a fucking good version of Lex Luthor. And he's really, really winding these guys up. And it works. Yes, Batman v Superman is a much better film. It's the second film within the DCEU. I will always say I do understand why it's a fan-splitting film. It's a divisive film. It's controversial because Warner Brothers never marketed it properly, never was honest with people about what it was. But if you take the film itself, actually, it's so superior to Captain America Civil War. It is. It has everything. It has the great beginning, the kind of montage of Batman's origin and young Bruce Wayne running, and we see kind of this compelling version of the Waynes getting killed and Bruce seeing it all, and then him falling in the cave. I think it's brilliant. And he doesn't actually rise. That's just part of the beauty, the beautiful life thing. So people say, why is Bruce Wayne being lifted by bats? That's not happening. It's the beautiful lie. It's not real. Right, babe? Did you get it right? Oh, God. And this is the problem. You make an intellectual, clever superhero movie, but I don't get it. What about the nightmare sequence? What was all that about? Well, the nightmare sequence. Even if you're stupid enough to take the nightmare sequence as a nightmare, right? It's still passable, isn't it? I mean, it's a visually compelling kind of sequence. I love seeing it. But of course, this was a moment that was going to be paid off in Justice League. Unfortunately, Warner Brothers wanted another Avengers Assemble, so we never got that. Sorry, people who were confused. You're never going to get it explained because you're not allowed to see the Snyder Cut. Sorry about that. Yes. So Batman v Superman is superior to Captain America Civil War. It's not superior in box office. That's because the modern day audience don't want complexities and intensities and great storytelling. They just want a bunch of people joking and fighting. They want generic, easy movies. They don't want this. But you see, we're not all part of the mainstream audience. I came out of this film utterly compelled. Utterly compelled. And I couldn't wait for Justice League. I couldn't wait for Wonder Woman. The introduction of Wonder Woman was perfect. The haters will tell you it wasn't a good introduction. But it was. It was great. There wasn't too much of her and there wasn't too little. So this film does a lot for me. This film, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, it does a lot for me because it really sets a benchmark and says, this is the way we're going to do things. And if you don't like it, you're going to have to leave. Unfortunately, there was more at work here than just, oh, I don't like it, I'm not going to see it. I prefer the generic MCU. There was very, very, let's just say, hateful MCU fans and comic book fans who weren't going to allow this film to succeed. They made videos after videos, gifs after gifs, posts after posts to make this film look like a circus. But it wasn't. This film's a beautiful film. This film means a hell of a lot to millions of people around the world. But they tried their best. But still, people like me are making videos about this film and telling you how awesome it was. Ultimately, there's two threads here. There's Batman, who's old, who's tired, who's lost Jason Todd's Robin. And he just wants to hurt villains now because he's had enough. An understandable narrative. And then you've got Superman, who's the newest superhero in town. He's saving people, but people don't know what to make of him. The senator from Kentucky doesn't want him acting unilaterally. She believes Superman shouldn't act politically. And she thinks by stopping a missile, he's acting politically. But of course, that's not how Superman sees it. So throughout the film, Superman is torn between being Superman, which is the dream of his father. That's the hero, that's the person his father wanted him to be. And I'm not talking about Jor-El, I'm talking about Jonathan Kent. So he tries to make that dream come true for a dead man. So ultimately throughout the film, he starts to have his doubts whether he should be this hero. And by the end, that decision to sacrifice himself, to kill Doomsday, but to sacrifice himself is massive because he's embracing this world. You are my home. This is my home. A beautiful moment. And if you can't get emotional about that because, oh, this is only the second film that Henry Cavill's Superman's in, I can't help you. You have to go. You shouldn't watch films. You should go and lock yourself in a dungeon, right? This is brilliant. This is brilliant. Now, this film's brilliant from my point of view. It doesn't have to be brilliant from your point of view. Here's the thing. When I see people talking on here, Man of Steel, it's such a crap movie. Batman v Superman is so terrible. From your point of view. But it's not terrible for people who like it. Now, I know some of you like to trigger us DCEU fans, and that's fine. But these films are here. And these films are loved. And ultimately, I come from a generation where we didn't give a shit about box office. You see, big box office covers a multitude of sins. This had a solid box office. This film's sins are there to see. No one's hiding them. No one's denying them because no film is perfect. No. Each film has its damn flaws, as does this one. But despite its flaws, it's brilliant. It's beautiful. It's compelling. It's got one of the best movie scores I have ever heard. It's visually unique. The narrative is unique. Batman v Superman and Man of Steel are superhero films with balls of solid rock. And I'll have words with any person who says different.